Hey y'all, thanks so much for clicking and coming here to see this second episode of Here with Cynthia. A really great conversation that I have with my friend Sarah Williams. She is an incredible human being who her adventure and her spirit for exploration has really inspired my life, and I know that it's going to inspire yours. There's so much just yummy conversation in this podcast. We talk a bit about what initially drew Sarah into becoming this badass backpacker, adventure seeking woman who has gone on several solo long backpacking trips, has done some crazy stuff in her life. She's also launched a adventure fitness business in Los Angeles. She's just an amazing human being who constantly it inspires me, and they're like, our conversation is so good, and I'm actually I can't believe I waited so long to share it with you guys, and I want to speak on that for a second and just talk about what I know to be true about me, and one of the things that I have to work on more and more and more each day, because it really limits what I'm able to do. And it's this desire to have everything align perfectly, or to do things perfectly, and how that oftentimes gets in my way, and I know it gets into other people's ways. And so really this the perfectionist in me wanted to edit this and make it look amazing, and for however many months now I've done nothing with it, and so I've been just paralyzed by this crazy want for perfection. And so instead, I'm doing I'm gonna share the straight up version of it with no edits, and that I'll tell you what has really inspired that for me. And it's a tragic accident that happened 2 weeks ago. My sister was in a terrible accident where she was and that she has been in ICU now for 2 weeks. Thank God she's alive. She's a miracle. But really, the reminder that time, we think we have time, and we just never know. We never know. And so I'm taking this moment to share this because, so many times, so often, I've sat back and not pursued great ideas because I think that I have more time, or because I think it has to be perfect. And a lot of what I talk about in today's podcast with Sarah, a lot of what we discuss is really the magic of not always having an exact plan, but trusting our instinct, and trusting those desires that are on our hearts, and moving forward without having everything clearly aligned, but trusting that things will fall into place as we go. So, my sister, she's gonna recover. We believe it 100%. She's gonna recover, and we're so grateful for her life. But I just take this experience as one for me personally, as a reminder that time isn't guaranteed, and we just have to act. So, guys, I hope that you enjoy this podcast and that you take something out of it. It's real, it's honest, it's vulnerable talk, and it will hopefully inspire you. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Good to see you too. It's been forever.
I know. I wish I could hug you.
Same. Where are you today?
I'm in LA.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the last time that we saw each other was in 2018. It's been that long, almost 2 years, which is hard to believe.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, time flies.
But it's cool because I feel like even though I haven't seen you, I still feel connected to you because you're very active on your social media, which I appreciate. And so I always kind of I still feel you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that is the cool thing about social media, is that we can still stay connected, but also strange at the same time, because I look at posts that pop up and I'm like, how has it been 5 years, or how has it?
Whoa.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for jumping on this call.
Yes, of course. I mean, I've been wanting to talk to you forever, so I think this is perfect.
It is. It's gonna be one of the great ways to like just to catch up and see how things are doing. So Sarah is just an amazing human being. She's a friend that I met in Los Angeles years ago that just inspires me, you know, like the whole point of me bringing people on as guests is to share stories from people that are just inspiring human beings with the hopes that they would like inspire you to maybe go out and do something amazing with your life. It's just a simple thing of like meditating more or journaling more, but really just to get inspired by different people. So, Sarah, I chose you because you're just one of these people in my life that I'm always so inspired by and amazed by, like the decisions you make and the adventures you go on, and also just the beauty of your heart and how it expresses itself through your art, through your adventures, through your words. I'm always like, love this girl so much. So a little bit about Sarah. She is a photographer, beautiful photographer. More than that, um, let's see, you've spent a month. This is what, 6 years ago? Did you spend a month in backpacking solo through the Sierra Nevadas? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So about 6 years ago, she spent a month traveling through the Sierra Nevadas by herself. And then since then, spent a week in an underground pitch black cave with no food, no lights. And then most recently, spent 5 months traveling 1,800 miles through the New Zealand wilderness. So this girl, this woman, is just amazing, um, adventure seeking, nature loving person that always inspires me. I think the one thing about you, Sarah, that stands out is like I feel like you intentionally place yourself into like environments that most people would be like, oh no, I'm okay. Like that seems dangerous. How in the hell am I going to survive that? Like, no way, count me out. And your response to those situations is actually like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to say yes to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful summary.
So there's a lot that I want to get into with you. Obviously, just the way that you document stories, your connection to nature, your connection to people, and your connection to yourself, which I think is really key in your success doing these adventures, like going on these explorations. Really, that connection to your mind and your body is what has served you well and just sets you up to win in those situations. So if you want to just, I guess, start off by what initially inspired you to go and take this long hike through the Sierra Nevadas by yourself for a month?
Let's see. I the first I okay, let me back up. My mom took me to Yosemite Valley for the first time when I was in my teens because her mother and father took her there and their parents took them there as kind of like this tradition. And I remember going there and I was really out of shape and we did like an easy hike and I was just like, this is so hard. I can't believe I can't this. And but I remember really loving it. And at the beginning of that hike, there's a sign that gives you the mileage to just different places. And I think that day we were only going like 3 miles or something like that, which I was like blown away by. I was like, that's crazy, we're going 3 miles. But at the very bottom of the list, it said Mount Whitney, which is an area that I'm somewhat familiar with, but it said like 210 miles. And I was like, that is insane. Who would do that? And then it just kind of like always stuck in my mind. And then life happened. I went to college and all that stuff and worked on developing other things. And then moved back to the California area, and then I started getting into exercising in the outdoors. because I didn't ever really like going to a gym. I was very uncomfortable there because I knew that I wasn't in shape, but I didn't know how to, and I was really shy and I didn't want to ask anybody. But so I just kind of like took to local trails, you know, like I enjoy getting my heart rate up outside. And, you know, even when it's hard, it's okay. Cause if you take a break, you like look around and it's just beautiful. It's like this multi-sensory experience.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of doing more and more of that kind of stuff. And I had a good friend who was doing an overnight backpacking trip and invited me to come, and I was like, that sounds great. I've never done anything like that before. I don't have any gear, I don't know anything. And they're like, it's fine, my friend's an Eagle Scout, we got you, just come. And I'm like, yes, perfect, okay. um, Long story short, that trip ended in search and rescue.
Oh gosh.
My first overnight backpacking trip, a lot of different things played out, but essentially, just myself included, was not knowledgeable about the area, what to do when things go wrong, and
Yeah.
we were lost, dehydrated, off trail, and my friend was slipping into shock essentially.
Wow.
And so we had to gather our devices, and I climbed to the highest peak that I could find to get rescue, to get out of that situation. And I was really embarrassed completely, you know, like even the 911 operator was like, where are you? And I couldn't even name the forest that I was in. I was
Oh
like
wow.
textbook example of everything not to do when going into nature.
Hmm.
And it really severely impacted me, but in a different way. Like, not necessarily like, oh, I'll never do that again, but if anything, like it really kind of like lit something in me, because even though that trip ended poorly, I saw something out there. I felt something out there.
Hmm.
Like being, you know, somewhere that I could only get to with just my feet, and the beauty and like the connection that I found to the people that I was with, and also to myself, and just there's a sense of freedom that I had never experienced before.
Hmm.
And so I felt that, but then also it was just completely muddied by humiliation, I think, at the time. And so I spent like every moment that I could, like learning all I could about what happened and what can I do to prevent something like that.
Yeah.
And so I learned, you know, wilderness training. I, you know, went and took classes on wilderness medicine and learned more about backpacking and hiking and just like everything that I possibly could. And then it went on one more trip with someone who was very experienced and was a very good mentor for me, just teaching me what to do in various situations. And then my third trip was the one that you're talking about. So I went from
Wow.
all of that to just kind of being like, okay, I remember that sign at Yosemite and the 210 miles, and I never forgot it. And I was like, I kind of want to do that almost like as a test to myself.
Yeah.
Um, so that way I could prove to myself that I wasn't that same person anymore, that I had learned and I had grown and had compassion for who I was, you know, but at the same time, like knowing that there's a world out there to be explored. And I felt that inkling to get out there. And I didn't want it to be, I don't know, I didn't want it to stop me. And
Yeah.
so, and before going on that trip, I had several friends who were like, oh my gosh, this trip's going to change your life. You have no idea. And I went on it and I was out there and it was amazing. And I was like, just looking around, I was like, how is this going to change my life? I don't know. And then I did it, and then I came back and I was like, wow, like that was amazing. Like when I came back into town, I was like, I could have kept going. Like I felt really amazing out there. And it did change my life, but you can't really see that in the moment. You can't tell
Yeah.
the ways in which something like that like really affects you until you learn how you change as a person through coming back to various situations
Hmm.
and
Well,
moving
I
forward
think
from
it's
that.
incredible that like, you took that experience was that could have been super traumatizing and really could have had the complete opposite outcome where you decided you were never going to step into wilderness again, that you actually took that as an opportunity to go, actually, I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And that you were able to still pull like the good parts of that experience and not really let that one bad experience determine everything for you is huge. Whether it's a person that is going out in nature or just going after a different sort of goal, right? Failure is a part of how we grow and really have success. We have to stumble across some hardship along the way. There's always obstacles, and if we quit every time something was hard, we'd never get anything accomplished. So That's big. And then it was just like only 2 trips, and then you were on your own. You're like, yeah, I got this.
I
That's
kind of become
amazing.
obsessive about things
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, honestly, thank you for not giving up on nature and going out into wilderness, because I don't think, who knows if I would have ever gotten out there, because you were one of the first people that I explored nature with, because I'm a total city girl. Grew up in Chicago, and then you and I met at the gym in Los Angeles. I had never backpacked before. I had gone camping once, car
Mhm.
camping, at like the Kern River. That was like the extent of my experience with nature. And then you did that trip to the Sierra Nevadas and went away for a month, and I was just like, wow, like I could never. I don't even know if I still would ever like do something solo, but I remember admiring that so much about you. And you were, yeah, you were the one of the first to have that, like, that patience to bring me along on a trip. I was you. I didn't have, you at the start. I had no equipment. I was borrowing pieces of like camping gear from all these different sources. A backpack that was too big for me, that was overpacked.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
never do that again. But you were so patient with me. But really, if it wasn't for you, I don't know that I would have had that experience out in nature in the wilderness. And really, some of my favorite memories that I have, and some of those transformative moments for me, have been out in nature. So I'm really grateful that you stepped into those shoes and you continued on your journey, because it has absolutely impacted me in such a positive way. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about the outdoor community is that, in a lot of respects, it's somewhat difficult to get started or to get out there, especially if you're used to a life in the city. And
Mhm.
so it does take one person, just one time, to just show you the kindness, to show you the ropes a little bit, just to show you like it's not as difficult as you may think. And it just requires a few things. Here it is. And it's just like it's a really pay it forward community. And a lot of things you learn from other people, and that's how I prefer to learn. Like, I'm so thankful for the internet and thankful for YouTube and all the resources and information that we have, but if I can learn from a human, like, that is my preferred method.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because I understand, especially now, and continue, like, how much these things have affected me and shaped me, and my formation and growth, it's like, why not share that with other people? And so I don't force it on anybody, but like, if someone were to express an interest or a curiosity, then I just go crazy. Like, someone's like, hey, I'm kind of interested in going on a hike, and then like 3 days later we have like a full trip plan and we're going. I'm like, don't tease me, because like, I love this stuff and I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Get as
thank
many people
you.
involved.
I
Yeah.
really am grateful for you, and including me and inviting me to join you out in the mountains.
Yeah, some of my favorite stories are of your first trip, when you brought the nightstick, the police nightstick, I think it was, that
Yeah, it
weighed
was
like probably 10
like a
pounds.
freaking steel baton, that like retractable baton, just in case. There was
Definitely need that in the
no,
woods.
just in case I needed to freaking blow somebody's knees out. And oh wait, and I also brought that big can of bear spray,
Hmm.
that enormous flask of whiskey. It
And
was
I
a
think
pretty much,
3 hardback books.
yes. Oh my god. Oh my god. And then
You
the
live and
worst
you learn. It's how you
the
do
worst
it.
part about it is that, like, I couldn't even hang. I couldn't even carry the thing. So like you guys helped carry my pack. I was so embarrassed. And then after that, the following trips was like, how light can I go? Right? Do I
Yeah,
need an extra pair of underwear? Nah. I was like looking through my pack and always like, how light can I possibly make this? Um,
exactly. Exactly.
so you mentioned that a lot of, that your first trip was life changing, but the I guess that realization of like that it was a life changing trip for you didn't happen immediately. When did you start to like really feel or sense that your life was different now because of that choice? That it wasn't like before. What was the biggest difference between who you were before that trip and who you emerged as?
I mean, there's a short answer and there's a long answer. I'd say the short answer would be, it was on that trip that I realized a couple different passions merging. Because I had gone to school for photography, and I've, had a camera in my hand since I was, 5 years old, with the disposable cameras and spending my allowance on, film.
Yeah.
But then, and then I had another passion of like fitness and outdoor recreation was, merging. And so it was on that trip where I really put those two elements together. I had purchased a new camera specifically for that trip, one that was lighter, but still had full manual capabilities. That way I could travel with it in, a rugged environment. And I really fell in love with the idea of trying to capture my environment, but specifically the way that I was seeing it. And I write a lot and I journal a lot. And so it kind of became its own piece of, writing and photography and art through expression, but then also art through reception of what was happening in the world around me. But I didn't particularly think anything that I captured on that trip was at all interesting, but and I think that's what's so difficult about, being in your own skin, is like, you don't realize like how many people don't see the world that you do, the way that you do. And so it kind of allowed me to, share a little bit of that insight. And a lot of people responded pretty well to it. And it was really affirming that whatever path was new before me was the one that was right for me. And it's not one that I could, see miles down. Developing a 5-year plan at that point, even still is so difficult for me, because so much of what I do is so based off of like opportunities and experiences that come out of seemingly nowhere, but it's all synchronistic, I
Yeah.
think. But then coming back, of course, like I had a confidence that I didn't have before that trip started. I kind of stepped into it, not knowing if I was even going to finish or if I was going to make it, or how would how would I deal with that? Like, would I get attacked by a bear in my sleep? Would I, fall in a river and get carried away and drown? Like, these are all things that I was like kind of thinking about, and that were very real possibilities, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so, I always have something in my head about like coming to a challenge and only having yourself to get you through it. You don't have the internet, you don't have someone next to you who has a ton of experience, you don't have so many things, but you have the most important thing, which is yourself. And to face a challenge after challenge after challenge, and then to get through it, and it builds a momentum in you, and gives you a confidence that I think is hard to get through other means. And so I came back from that trip having developed that confidence in myself, I think. And even though a lot of it isn't necessarily pertaining to the city, I learned that to navigate yourself in the natural world is one of the greatest things that you can do, because it's what you're designed to do. And there's so many dormant forces inside of us that are not awakened because we're not in a situation that calls for them. And so to be out there, and also to attack it from an artistic standpoint too, so I'm engaging so many parts of who I am, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. There's nothing quite like it, because it's just our biology, it's just who we are. And like when you're in an environment that can highlight that, where you use it in a way that it's designed to be used and to wake things up, like it's unreal. And yeah. And so having woken those things up a little bit, like just tiny bit, just each time I do something like this, like it just inspires me more, because you see more of yourself, you see more capabilities, you see more ways of connecting. And it's just, I just want to keep going. And that's kind of like, it's an unfolding that is never ending. And I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects that just kind of keeps me going back to those types of experiences.
I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that at that time and even now, to come up with a 5-year plan is difficult, right? Like you sort of just say yes to opportunities as they are presented to you, and life unfolds as it does. For a lot of people, especially in our culture, that's really hard to wrap their mind around, not having a 5-year plan, not having a plan in general. Like I know that that's one thing that I love about you, is that you're just like, I'm gonna do this, and I don't have the whole picture all at once. You know, I know when you were preparing for your trip to New Zealand, there were certain things you were preparing for, but there was still a lot that was unknown. Like you had your gear, you knew the date that you were going, and a general idea of um, the timeline and the trail that you were going to be on. But for the most part, that trip was very unknown and unpredictable, and you were going alone. You didn't really know who you were going to come across along the way, but you didn't let that get in your way. You know, you were just committed to going, and you were like trusting that it was all going to work out. And you hear like the law of attraction, or you hear things like the universe always provides, and that can feel like really like, what is that? But in your life, what are what is the proof of that in your life? How has that been real and true for you as you've said yes to things that maybe you didn't have the whole picture yet, but you were still, following your heart and knowing, no, I think this is the right direction that I should go in.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is like a beautiful mantra, and one that has taken me a long time to truly understand. And I mean, just looking back, it's so interesting because like I was really hesitant to all of that too. It's like, what do you mean the universe provides? Like what? No, like provides money in my bank account? Like provides like how does this work? Like, um, but looking back, it the magic is disguised sometimes in your everyday life.
Mm.
And even though the best way to describe this, well, since you started talking about it, the New Zealand experience,
Yeah.
there's a quote that I heard when I was like in 7th grade, and I don't know who it's by, and it's paraphrased, but I
Uh-huh.
never forgot it, that says something along the lines of, in order to discover a new in order to discover a new lands, you have to be okay and willing to lose sight of the shore for a really long time.
Oof.
And I always kind of take that to heart because
Good.
um, in order to like achieve new things that have never been done, in order to go places that you've never been, like you can't be holding on to certain things.
Mm.
And you have to realize like, what are you holding on to and why are you holding on? And
Yeah.
if it's for fear of losing that thing, or if it's because you are just afraid of where you'll land, like sometimes like that's when you let go. And I remember crying at the airport when I was leaving to go to New Zealand. Like, even though like I knew like how amazing it was going to be, there was just something about leaving my life that I was really having a hard time with. And it was hard to express that, in a lot of ways, because everybody's like, oh my God, you're going to go on this amazing journey. It's going to be so great. And then I was like, I know it's going to be great, but that doesn't make it like easy to leave behind everything. Like I moved out of my apartment, who I had a great roommate and like a good situation in Los Angeles, and
Mm.
I just like put everything into storage, and then my cat was with my brother and my roommate, and like and just leaving was really hard. But I didn't tell anybody that because it was difficult to, I don't know, to combat people's excitement with like what I was feeling inside.
Yep.
And then, like I said, like in the airport, I was like, this is nuts, but exciting at the same time, because the thing is, you have to leave room for those kind of opportunities to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of fast forward a little bit, the best example that I can give was between these two women who I met when I was walking across New Zealand. One was this older woman named Marie, who was from Belgium. She was probably in her 70s. And then I met a girl who was my age, similar, and she's from the Netherlands, and her name was Carlene. And we were all walking together at one point. And Marie was very closed-minded, even though she was there. She was there, but she wasn't open to anything. She knew exactly where she was going. She knew at what time she would get there. She was gonna know. She just knew everything
Uh-huh.
about her experience and about where she was going. And when people would talk to her, she wouldn't really engage with them because she was on a path.
Mm.
And then Carlene was like the exact opposite. She was like, I'm here. I guess I'm going this way. but oh, someone wants to talk to me, let's have a chat with this person and see what their life is like. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I'll stay at this place tonight, but I don't know, well, let's just see what happens. And then she would end up, you know, on a yacht somewhere with somebody she had just met, like learning about life from someone who has, you know, fished for years and years and years, and just like has a new friend for life and a story to tell about this person and this connection that they made. And for me, that was a really beautiful, like very tangible thing that I could see about people and the way that they live their lives, about like having a plan and sticking to it, which, don't get me wrong, is necessary for so many different things, for development of business, for just family, everything. Like sometimes you need a plan and you do need to stick to it, like for sure. But also just like this beautiful example of Carlene, who just so many beautiful things were coming into her life, and I could see it daily, like how it was happening. And it was just like this perception of the way that they viewed just the world around them. And I'll literally never forget that, just how like the more loving and open you are towards the people around you, like the more that comes back to you, like the more you're also like willing to receive, but also it's just like how much you give. And I know that that's an adage that we all like know or have heard of since elementary school, but like to truly believe it, but then to live it is something else entirely. And that was the proof in the pudding for me, of just like when you're open and you say yes to the unknown, like you leave space for it to be filled with things that you don't know yet. Like that's when it gets filled. Like if you know everything and you have everything, then things are just gonna ricochet off of you. Opportunities are gonna come and go. But if you're open, willing to receive, then they will.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, we both left California at the same time. I was considering jumping on with you to go to your trip. I actually had said yes. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna hike all of New Zealand with you. It sounded like a great idea. And then that same night, I had like terrible nightmares and woke up drenched in sweat. I had never had this before. I was soaking wet. My like half of my bed was as if someone poured water over it. I had to wake up in the middle of the night, strip down, go to the other side of the bed. I woke up that morning. I said, Sarah, I think I've made a mistake. I'm not going with you. I think this is your thing. This is absolutely your thing. It's not mine. But similar feeling of, leaving, the excitement that people had for me, that I was going, but struggling as well with, holy crap, like, because I too had a really great setup in Los Angeles. I had a great, amazing friends who were family. I was happy. I was making a lot of money, and it was all good. But I still felt this like draw to leave, to explore this part of me that I felt that I needed to do, but had never had the courage to say yes to. And really, I want to share this for anyone listening that has a desire. Maybe it's like a whisper sometimes it's really loud and it's persistent and it just keeps showing up in your life. That a lot of times the hardest decision is just saying yes to it, and when you say yes, that everything else just unfolds effortlessly. And for me to leave, it was just saying yes that was the hardest part, like coming to that decision, because I had wanted to leave and live abroad for a long time. I had always just kind of created story in my head that was like, other people get to do that, other people find a way, they have the finances, they have the means, but I'll never be able to do that. And so for a long time, it's what I believed. I never took any action. And then the hardest decision was just saying, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then as soon as I said that, everything was easy. Like nothing was hard. I say the only the only hard part of my decision to leave was actually coming back. Was when I returned, like that part was difficult, but the actually being away and going, like, oh my God, like the life experience that I got from that was really cool. And yeah, so anyone listening, if there is something in your heart that's saying like, do it, go for it, it's just being persistent. Trust that once you say yes, that things will just flow for you. I do believe that 100%.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, that initial yes is the most important thing. You don't have to know the how.
Yeah.
You just have to know what you want to do. And even if it's crazy, like especially if it's crazy. You know, it's just like you find a way to make it work. And if it's truly the right thing, it will work.
Mhm.
And it doesn't, you know, if you say yes to it, it's not, it might not be something that happens like next weekend, or, you know, like even next month. Like you could, you know, put it in your mind, it could happen sooner or later. But the thing is that it will, if it's the right thing and you truly believe what you're doing is right. Like it's just the, kind of going back to our conversation about, you know, the universe provides. It's like, you, okay, you say you want to do this thing, say it's a crazy trip, you're like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I don't know how I'm gonna afford it, I don't know how I'm gonna get the time off work, I don't know all of these things. You don't have to know that right away. You just have to know that you want to do it, and you will do it. And then all of a sudden you're gonna meet somebody who happened to go to that area and knows a friend where you can stay for free. Or like, you know, all of a sudden something happens where you don't have your job anymore, or like, it's just, that's the thing. It's like, it's hard to describe, but it's very real. And you just have to be open to it, and you just have to make that initial decision.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things is, and which I believe you've definitely developed within yourself, and I know that I've done the work in developing within myself, is also trusting yourself. Like having a practice of like being very in touch with your mind, your heart, like understanding your inner world enough so that you trust yourself. You give yourself permission because you you know who you are and you're willing to step into that unknown space. You're willing to say yes, right? Um, it takes, I think it takes a little bit of knowing too for yourself, you know? Otherwise, you're doubting yourself. Then that's probably the biggest thing that keeps you from moving forward is really just doubting yourself, doubting that you can do it. And the moment that you really believe in yourself, then you're like, oh, I got this. Let's go.
Yeah. And I think the key to that too is developing your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have a good sense of it, then it's hard to know what is it. You
Yeah.
know, like, is it your mind, or is it your heart, or your, like, what part of you is speaking and what part of you is listening. And like my favorite exercise that I like accidentally found is essentially for developing your intuition, your ability to say yes and to not have a plan, was
Mm-hmm.
to go on a solo road trip without having any idea necessarily of what you wanted to get out of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe pick like a far off point. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I know that I'm in Las Vegas. That's where I grew up. And I want to maybe go down to Santa Fe, New Mexico, but there's a bunch of states in between me and there, and I don't really have I have like 5 days off, so I'm just gonna get there eventually. And then um, I would just start driving and like kind of like knowing the direction that I'm going, but then anything that popped up, I was like, oh, you know, I've always heard about that town. Let me stop there and get a cup of coffee. Or just like allowing yourself to say yes to yourself, or no, being like, oh, everybody seems stop there and it seems cool, but you know what, I'm just not into it, let me just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then like just listen to whatever you want music wise, like go listen to like inspiring podcasts while you're doing it. And the solo road trip is probably like the single-handed thing that really helped me to develop that.
Awesome.
um
How many of those trips did you take? Or
oh my
have you done solo road trips where you're just like, I got a few days off. I'm going to go visit Colorado or whatever.
yeah, countless, to be honest.
Really? I
Like
love
it's like, yeah, like I'd have friends who would, you know, I started doing this even when I was in college. You know, I went to like a international art school, so I had friends like all over the place. And I kind of want to do a road trip, so I couldn't visit the international people, but like I like put little dots on a map. I was like, okay, I have a friend in New Jersey, and then
that.
there's one in Ohio, Tennessee. Okay, I think I can make this work. And then like I just like put them on a map, and I was like, I'm gonna go visit all of them and on the during spring break. And then I would, and then there's just something really freeing and beautiful about that, because it's like you're being guided, but it's you. But then there's also all these cool things that keep happening. And then, you know, depending on like the media that you're ingesting, like if you're actually consciously listening to things that, you know, get your brain working, and you listen to music that enriches your soul, then, you know, it just becomes like this really beautiful experience. And, you know, and I think sometimes it's hard for people to just take off and to go,
Yeah.
like to move out of the country, you know what I mean? Like start small, you know, like baby steps. Like some people don't like to jump in the ice cold water. Some people will tiptoe in, and that's okay. You know, everybody's style is different, but the only thing that's important is that you are doing it, you know, in whatever fashion that is for you. And you know what that is.
Yeah.
Um,
But what I've learned about getting into ice cold water, it's just so much easier if you just go all in.
yeah.
Let me just put my toe in. Let me get to knee.
Yeah.
No, just get all the way, submerge yourself, get your head underwater, come back up. That's like the easiest way to get acclimated to cold water. I found that, yeah, I struggled for a long time doing like cold water immersion. And that was one trick. I was like, okay, that's when I learned that trick. You have to get your whole head, I don't know if it was Wim Hof or whatever, like get your whole head underwater and come back up. Your brain will catch up to the rest of your body and it will help to regulate everything else. And it's like, get in and then everything else will regulate. The things will begin to unfold for you. I haven't done a solo like road trip just off the cuff like that, but I do it sometimes where I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just getting in my car and I'm going to drive to wherever I feel like I'm supposed to go. So it might be to a park where I sit and I'll read for a little bit,
Yeah, exactly.
drive around. But I like practicing that too. Like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to go see where it leads me. I might stop at this coffee shop. I might go into this bookstore. I might have lunch here, but by myself and just make a day out of it. I might not have any plans, but I'm trusting that and just going where the wind blows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like to speak a little bit more to like doing things without really knowing, what's going to come out of it. Like that was one of the struggles that I had in New Zealand was that like I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, girl, you're going to be alone for 5 months in the New Zealand wilderness. You better come back with like a story to tell, a book to write, an idea to do something. You're going to like, that's the time to do it. You got to, really just hammer it out. Like, and so like I ended up meeting a lot of people along the way and having, of course, amazing experiences. But like at the end of it, I didn't have that idea. I didn't have that book. I didn't have whatever it is that I thought that I would have, that I put so much pressure on myself to get. And when I left, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna come back. I don't, I had a work holiday visa for a whole year. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do when I'm done? Like, it's so interesting working towards a goal, like every single day I'm walking to the end of the country. I know like what I'm doing kind of essentially.
Yeah.
But I was like, what is my idea? Like, what am I going to do? And then like, I fell into like a slight like depression after it was over because like I was working so hard towards this goal of like finishing what I was doing, but then also to have something to show for myself of it, not just to be able just to say that I did something. Because if you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to have a life experience that not many people in the entire world get to have, like what are you going to do with it? What are you going to say? What are you going to and so I put so much pressure on myself for that. And then I felt like a depression and an anxiety because I felt like I didn't really have a whole lot to it's not like I was done. I was like, oh, I did it. Like, okay, I'm going to do all these amazing things. Oh my God. And then I just like have sat with it. And it's been a year since I've gotten back from that trip. And I did come back to Los Angeles, which I didn't know that I was going to do when I left. And then I came back in a way like feeling, and I hate to say it, but like I felt weirdly like a failure. I was like, I don't, like I came back to LA, I came back to my life, like, and kind of going back to the initial trip, when you asked me like, how did it change you? I didn't know what the answer to that was right away because it was such an impactful experience. How, I'm still to this day processing it. And since then I have created a program to help teach people a little bit of all the things that I've learned. And that's why I bring it up, because you're talking about the ice baths, and that's one thing that we do in the program. And one of my favorite aspects of it, kind of tying back into what you were just saying, was like when I tell people before they get under the ice, like the idea is like you're gonna panic. Every part of you is going to scream in every possible direction. But the idea is like you find the calm as quick as you can. And there's all these little tiny lessons like in everything. And that's my ice bath lesson, is like you panic, you scream, like everything is exploding inside of you. And then you come up and then you just have to breathe.
Yeah.
And you sit there and everything is okay.
Yeah.
And you're like, huh, that's strange. And like in the ice bath, you're like, okay, cool, that was awesome. You feel good, but then something shifts. And suddenly, like when you find yourself in chaos in the future, you know that you're going to be okay. You know that you can get yourself back to that calm state. even when everything around you is screaming in chaos. And it's like all these tiny little lessons that I've learned like in nature, because I would do the ice baths, but like in an actual like iceberg lake, or like, you know, like all these little tiny things. And like that has been my biggest takeaway, is like, what are these little lessons that I got to experience firsthand, and how can I share that with other people?
Yeah, and that's, you know, maybe you didn't come out with a book or some epic like tale to tell from, and maybe that is still unfolding, you
Yeah,
know. You might have like a revelation in 10 years of something that occurred on that trail that's going to be life-giving to, like, not just yourself but to like so many people around you. um but what you're doing is you're still creating from that space, you know. I feel like it's like stuff we learn when we're kids in grade school, you know. It's like that stuff sometimes we don't really realize that it's with us, that we've learned a lesson there until we're a lot older, like, oh yeah, you know, I that's still with me, that lesson or that friendship or that conflict or whatever, like it's still it's influencing my life right now, you know. But I get that feeling too. I mean, I share with you in that feeling of like being slightly depressed, kind of going like, okay, like now what? Like what
yeah,
now?
exactly.
It may not look the way that I wanted it to look, but still super grateful that I did it. And I know that life is unfolding beautifully because of that decision to leave. And I might be back in LA, and it's okay. You know, you might. I say this to anybody. Look, home is always going to be home. Anyone who's like thinking about leaving or doing something big, it's like things will still be around. Like it's not that like the
100%.
whole world just disappears. Like, are you
Yeah.
living with your old roommate again?
No, no, I'm in a different
Okay.
situation now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say you can fight back with your roommate, but like your
Yeah,
life will be there. You know, your
exactly.
friends, your family, those key elements of your life will always be there. You get come back, and life is always, we're always creating. Like life is
Yeah.
always new. Every day is an opportunity to create and refresh and just like get after it. And you've done some great stuff. Like so, Adventure Fit being one of the awesome projects that you're currently working on, where anybody in Hollywood who is interested in getting in touch with nature and hiking, and not just hiking, but as she mentioned, there's breath work, there's ice baths, really training as well, a whole training program around getting fitter, stronger, and prepared for elements in nature. They'll take you through how many weeks of training?
Each program is slightly different, but we roughly are in between 4 to 5 weeks.
4 to 5 weeks of training with an amazing teachers, instructors, and then it always finishes with some sort of like weekend trip in the mountains. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
some areas you've visited so far?
Yeah, so I mean, we just launched at the end of last year, so we're just developing, and it's been even though we're not even a year old yet, it's been absolutely incredible. So the most recent trip that we did was to Big Sur. We did a 3-day backpacking trip to Cone Peak, which is the highest coastal peak in the lower 48. And
Amazing.
so
How many people in the group?
we had 9 people. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
So it's a battle, because like we want to bring everybody, but at the same time, like we have to keep the groups somewhat small, because the whole point of what we do is we develop this like group intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
and you train with with everybody as a team,
Mm-hmm.
and we develop them almost like as a family.
Yeah.
And through the weeks of training, like you look shoulder to shoulder with the people who are doing the crazy things that you are, and you develop that connection.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's, I don't even know where to begin with it, because it's absolutely incredible. And you know, when I came back from New Zealand, I was depressed. I was like, I don't know what I have to show for myself. But then this Adventure Fit like program started to slowly unfold, because people would come up to me like, oh my God, that's so crazy, how did you do that? Like, I could never do that. And like, I'm thinking back to my original self, I'm like, if I did this, then you absolutely can. Like, I started small, like with the smallest local trails you could think of, and then, you know, ultimately ended up, you know, hiking across the country for 5 months. And so like that's the basis of the program. And then my partner Austin, we developed the program together. He also, you know, does crazy things outside, and people are like, oh my God, how do you do that? And it's like, let us show you.
Yeah.
Like, come with us. We'll, you know, like we were saying, like I was saying earlier, it just takes one person to show you the ropes once, and then you're almost set for life. And so like
Yeah.
that's what our program is based on. It's like, we're going to bring you together, we're going to teach you the things that we didn't know before when we got started, and then we're going to take you to actually do these things. And because it's, you know, there's so many different programs out there that will take you on a trip, and there's like a lot of physical training programs that will get you fit for something, but this is like the full mind body experience, you know, and it's about connection to yourself. Like, we encourage people, you know, I make journals for everybody, and we do journal prompts so you can connect to your inner world as well as your outer world. And but that also, like, there's people who are not into that, and that's okay. Like, there's some people who are, like, would rather speak things as opposed to write them down. And like, we just create a space for you to be exactly who you are. We don't force you to do anything, but we encourage you to take risks and to do, when we provide a safe environment for you to do that, so that way you can take them, you know, with us, and then that way you're a little bit more comfortable when it comes to taking them in a bigger space. It's a full-on training program, and we're so stoked. It's absolutely amazing. And
I love it.
yeah,
I see what you're doing as, like, you know, you have missionaries that go out and do God's work. I think you're doing like God's work in that, you know, you really are. You're helping awaken a part of people's lives that, like you mentioned earlier, are dormant. These natural these natural ways of being that we aren't tapped into because we're confined to cities, and we don't get to, you know, really like dive into those parts of our brain or our survival instincts, that are such a huge part of who we are as humans, having this earthly experience, you know.
yeah,
And nature is just, when I'm in nature is when I feel most connected to, like, to spirit or to God. Creation just like really puts into perspective so much. You know, your ego that can feel so big in certain environments can just shrink immediately when you're out in nature beneath a blanket of stars, just feeling the tiniest thing ever. Or when you realize in nature just how, you know, susceptible you are out there, how
exactly.
vulnerable you are out there, you know, like life, death, all of those things. Like, it really does spark something so deep beyond just our thinking brain. You know, it connects us to something very spiritual, I believe. So the work that you're doing and inviting people out there, and inviting them into this like new relationship to themselves, and discovering new parts of them that they didn't know they even had before. That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
this so much. Yeah. How can people get in touch with you to be a part of like some of your upcoming groups?
Yeah, so we're most active on Instagram. It's Adventure Fit LA is our handle for all social media platforms.
Yep.
And so we're, you know, currently working with our alumni only right now, in, you know, finishing up the quarantine. We wanted to do something, but we were working with the people that we have, and we're taking them canyoneering in a couple weeks. But
Cool.
after that, we're going to be starting a new cycle where we're welcoming new people into it. Details on that will be coming out, but yeah, Adventure Fit LA on Instagram is probably the best way to find us, or adventurefitla.com. You can get on our mailing list, and we'll send you some fun announcements, and keep you in the loop of what's going on. Definitely.
Mhm. Amazing. We'll be wrapping up soon here. I did want to ask you, because you've done these trips that probably felt scary at some point along the way. Like, what has been one of the maybe the most challenging experiences you've had, or scariest experiences you've had, and how has your, you know, your practice, your preparation come in handy for you?
Well, most of these experiences are kind of scary stepping out into them, but the biggest challenge that I always have somehow never has to do with the natural world or any circumstances that I'm in, because for some reason when I'm in those situations, I'm confident in them. However, my biggest struggle and the scariest thing is that relationship to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I going to be okay when those things happen?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when they're happening, I'm somehow I'm in the zone, I'm good, but it's through the repetition of that is that confidence of knowing. And I think the biggest example of that was something that you mentioned that I didn't talk about yet, was the cave experience where I was marooned underground for 6 days or indefinitely, essentially to get out of this cave and navigating without a headlamp, with nothing. I couldn't even see my hands at all. And
Girl.
that was the most terrifying thing I had ever done. And the, the scariest part was the beginning, was that first step of being like, oh man, this is what's happening. I'm really gonna do this. I'm really gonna go sit in that cave and try to get out of there with nothing, literally nothing. I only have myself. That's it. That was scary. Like, and it was that sense of trust that I didn't necessarily have with myself at the time, that I'm like, can I do this? I, for some reason, wasn't afraid of the dark that much. Like, I knew there could be like snakes and bats and things that would crawl on my face if I tried to sleep, but I put that out of my mind. You know, I was like, if that happens, it probably will happen, but I will have to deal with it only at that moment. I cannot worry about all of the things that can go wrong right now. I can't. Like, it's debilitating. And so, but I was like, I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself going into that. And I was like, that's the part that was scary. I was like, can I do this? And the thing that I'm so thankful for in myself is that I allowed myself the space to find out. I didn't stop it from happening. I wasn't like, oh, nope, I'm too scared, I'm gonna not try it. Like, I still did it. I showed up and I said yes. And through that got me through any kind of potential scary situation. Because I find, like, I turn on, like, when those situations arise, like when, you know, like I'm lost or stranded or completely in a dark area and I have no idea how to get out. Like, I am confident in myself to be able to get through it. And that is the biggest lesson of it all for me.
God, yes. You know, there's a lot of people who strive to keep their world as safe as possible, as risk-free as possible, and that's kind of how they choose to move forward. And sometimes I just think they're so, you know, safety and taking precautions and things like that. You know, we value our lives. We want to take care of ourselves, take care of the people around us. But sometimes you have to put yourself in situations that are going to force you to grow and
Yes.
force you that are going to be scary in order for you to expand and develop in your life. And it, you know, I mean, for me, you were on a trip with me when I tore my hamstring at the end of a trip. That was a moment for me that was huge. Like that, you know, hiking out however miles we still had to hike out, and having that shift in my mindset. If it wasn't for something like that happening to me, you know, something painful, something hard to like finish, if it wasn't for that, you know, that trip taught me, wow, our minds are so powerful, and how we choose to see our current situation, how we choose, like, the perspective we choose to have when things get tough. um, how powerful it is that our brain is like way more in control than anything physical that's happening. If we just choose to go, okay, you know, so you choosing, okay, I'm not sure about this cave. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel whenever it happens, but I'm just going to allow it. I'm just going to worry about it when it happens, you know, and then when it happens, your survival instinct is there. You tap into something you wouldn't have ever known you were capable of,
Exactly.
unless in that moment, unless you had said yes to that, right?
Yeah.
So our brains are so powerful like that, and that experience taught me so much about um, that simple shift in my mind, right? Because I'm sure you remember, but I was crying, I was screaming every time I took a step. My leg was in so much pain, and we still had, I don't know, 6 miles to hike or something like that out, and I was just like, I have no idea how I'm gonna do this. Like, this is great. And then our friend was like, hey, I gotta have a heart to heart with you right now. Like, every time you scream and cry, like, are you for real? Do you need us to carry you out? And I was just like, and he basically was like, we need you to walk out of here. You know, like, it's gonna be really hard if you don't. And I was like, okay, oh, I'll do it. And I just shifted my mindset and was like, instead of every time it felt like that excruciating pain shot through my body, instead of crying or screaming, I decided I was going to laugh or sing. And so I spent the remainder of the hike, and I just laughed or I started singing out loud every time it hurt, and it just completely changed the experience.
Exactly.
The pain was still there. It was still painful, but the experience just changed because of that little shift in my mind. And even like talking about going into cold water, that too, I would see athletes in baths of ice baths, and I'd be like, oh no, like that, absolutely not, because I hate feeling cold. It's like the one thing I just was always say, I could never sit in an ice bath. And when I was in Bali, I tried sitting in like some ice baths and some cold baths. And I like at first remember only being able to be under the water for maybe like a minute and a half max, and feeling like my limbs, my fingers were gonna break off, my toes, like everything hurting. And then I remember coming out of the tub and watching others do it. And I was like, well, they're fine. Like, their fingers are not falling off. Their feet are fine. Their hands are fine. Um, looking at them going, they're totally fine. Like, what is it about your thought process right now that is getting in the way of you being totally fine, right? And so
Exactly.
then the next time I went in, I was like, okay, I'm fine. My fingers are fine. My toes are fine. And it just shifted the whole experience. So
Yes.
just that mental fortitude that we always have access to and can develop over time is powerful.
But you have to put yourself in that situation for you to know that it exists.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can read about it in books all day long. You can, but you will never know like what you're made of until you find out, like in those situations. And I think that's what really drove me, is because, like, and in your experience too, it's just like you can be so surprised in yourself, like when those things happen.
Hmm.
And if anything, like that's why I seek them out. It's because like I want to know what I'm made of. I want to know that when things go wrong, like I'm good,
Yes.
you know. And then I can provide that for other people around me too. Like when things go wrong, like I can be that person that they can rely on, or to work as a team in
Hmm.
order to make sure that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful lesson to carry into your everyday life, especially right now with everything that's happening with the pandemic. It's like it's going to be okay. Like, you know, like in your, you know, like things are going to look different and you're going to have to challenge yourself to think differently. But that should be something that we're willing and capable of doing.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Well, you are absolutely a inspiration. Your life is. Thank you for being a source of inspiration in my life. You are constantly just like you and everyone that I'm bringing onto the show. They're people that just inspire me. That really I need in my life on days where I don't feel motivated or don't I lack the confidence. Really, you've served as a source of confidence, a source of inspiration in my life, and so I'm super super grateful for you. Before we wrap up here, my last question is, what's next for you? Like, what is there a new adventure on the horizon? What do you have planned?
Yeah, I mean, I've been focusing a lot of my energy into the growth and development of Adventure Fit, and that is like my greatest passion right now because it gives back. So working to expand that is probably my biggest focus. But of course, in my mind, there's always something that I'm doing. My next like big adventure for myself, I want to ride my bicycle around the ring road in Iceland.
Oh,
It's 800 miles around the circumference, so I definitely want to do that. I don't know if I'll be able to do it this year with everything that's going on. I'm still gonna try, but if not next year, definitely, you know, still looking towards, you know, expanding my alpinism with higher mountain peaks, you know, more mountaineering, and I want to get better at split boarding so that way I can hike up and then split board down.
awesome.
So there's definitely, I mean, my mind is always racing with different ideas and trips like that, but most of my focus is going towards Adventure Fit because I want to adventure with purpose. I want to do things not only for myself, because I will always push myself. I will always grow. I don't have a problem, you know, putting myself in those situations anymore, but it's more than just me now. Like I want, how can I expand that to other people? How can other people experience, at least on some level, you know, that aspect? That way it can help them grow and expand in their own lives and in their businesses and in their families. How can we have that ripple outward.
Yeah. Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great purpose there and mission. You know, it's like having impact and not just doing it for yourself, but really considering the world around you, considering the people that you get to invite into that space is amazing.
Yeah, 'cause I don't care like who you are, like if you're a CEO of a company or if you know, like whatever position like you have, there's nothing that will not be impacted for the greater in your life if you just spend more time outside.
Yes.
And especially like if there's people who are like under the influence of others who might not have that growth mindset, like it's debilitating to them as an individual. And we just need more people in our society to come alive with the ideas that they have inside them. They need to feel the confidence that what they have to say is valid. And I, you know, found that in nature, and I want other people to find that. So all those little Einsteins out there, or just like people who are gonna, you know, to develop a business that's gonna help their community. It's like I want them to know that they can. And there's so many different ways of doing that, but I think that their connection to nature can inspire and help all of that.
I agree. Yes, we need more people. The world just needs more people that are coming alive with the things that matter to them, that they're passionate about. And I absolutely agree. Getting out in nature, just like it's like a fast track to your those inner parts of your heart and your mind that just help to expand you as a human. So, guys, if you're in LA area, go to Adventure Fit LA on Instagram, message them, be a part of their next group the next time they're around. Sarah, you are so wonderful. Thank you for giving me your time, for sharing your stories with us. I'm sure there was so much more we could have covered, but I think that I love
the world.
we'll do this again another time. I'm so grateful for your friendship, girl, and I love you so much.